Mortal Kombat scared Congress, but Nighttrap terrified the world. Yeah, that is what caused an international panic. Nighttrap was basically B-movie camp. It was about a bunch of vampires dressed like SWAT cosplayers kidnapping women from a sorority that, for some reason, is full of booby traps. You play a nameless, faceless government agent watching the whole thing on security cameras and operating the traps to keep the women safe. The scariest thing about this game was the janky early full motion video. Not exactly a hallmark of society's decaying moral fiber. So, how did it end up before Congress? Let's go back to the 90s. Video games and technology were advancing. Games were leaving the arcade and entering people's homes, and games featuring digitized live actors were starting to emerge. It was giving games a new feeling of realism, and certain parties were starting to notice. Now, the violence that was common in video games was taking place against realistic looking people. Some people were worried this would desensitize children to violence or lead them to solve more problems with violence. The 90s were a weird time morally. America was just coming off the satanic panic. People were worried about violence in music and movies and television shows. Video games weren't the first target for their moral outrage, but they were the newest. And like everything else, the news sensationalized this into corrupting the youth of America, spurring the moral panic of parents who weren't paying that close attention to what their kids were playing. And nothing grabbed headlines faster than a fighting game that let kids rip each other's heads off. Mortal Kombat was hugely popular at the time, both in arcades and in the home, and everyone knew its most iconic feature: fatalities. Images of Sub-Zero ripping some guy's head off with his spine dangling and blood dripping were everywhere, and with the new digitized actors, the violence looked more real than any fighting game that had come before. And everyone also knew that kids were playing. Hell, I was 12 the first time I burned a guy to a skeleton or electrocuted him till he exploded, and it forced politicians to pay attention. And once video games had their attention, they started looking for other problems. And they found Nighttrap. Now, if you actually play Nighttrap, it's kinda goofy. The goal is to protect women while a bunch of stuntmen dressed in black fall into Roadrunner-style traps. There's no sex or nudity or even explicit violence. The worst thing that happens is a woman gets pulled through a secret door, which this sorority also comes equipped with for some reason. And its most infamous scene? A woman in lingerie getting taken out of a bathroom. That's it. That's the whole scene. That is the scene that Congress lost its mind over. And politicians being politicians took this one scene and then just guessed what the rest of the game was about. Senator Byron Dorgan said the goal of the game was to trap and kill women. Senator Lieberman said he understood why some people wanted to ban games entirely. Nighttrap became a lightning rod for all the parents' fears. Toys R Us and KB Toys pulled it off the stores, Sega stopped producing it, and Nintendo saw an opportunity. See, Sega already had its own ratings board and its own rating system, but it still approved Nighttrap, so that gave Nintendo the chance to paint itself as the family-friendly company that would never make anything so vile and horrid as Nighttrap. Their rivalry was one of the things that pushed Congress to create a universal rating system, but Nighttrap wasn't the only game that got caught in the crossfire. Lethal Enforcers used a light gun called the Justifier to shoot digitized characters duck hunt style. This was a game putting a gun into the hands of children and rewarding them for shooting realistic looking people. Sure, there have been plenty of shooting games before, but with the new realistic graphics, Congress was worried it would blur the lines between fantasy and reality. You were now shooting and killing sprites that looked like real people. It exemplified everything that Congress thought was wrong with video games, and that little plastic gun made a great prop during the hearings. Of course, now that I think about it, when I was little and I used to play at my grandmother's house, she had a cap gun that was made of metal, and I definitely pretended to shoot my very real sister with it. But I guess that was just good old wholesome fun. But yeah, video games were clearly the problem. But it was clear to Congress that it was a growing problem. So they gave the video game industry a choice: start regulating your content, or we'll do it for you. Now, I don't want to give the impression that everyone was just trying to ban video games. Yes, there were those people, and they were very loud, but there were also lots of people that appreciated there were family-friendly games like Mario and Sonic. They didn't need censorship. They needed knowledge. They needed a way for parents to know what their kids were playing and if it was appropriate. They needed a rating system, like television and movies, so parents could know at a glance the kind of content their kids were being exposed to. So in 1994, the ESRB was created, a universal rating system for video games. But while America turned to a rating system, other countries took a different approach. Nighttrap was outright banned in Australia. They called it objectionable. Though, to be fair, the ratings board in Australia is notoriously tough even today. They may not ban games, but they can deny them classification, which has the same effect. In the UK, it was given a 15+ rating like movies, and Germany actually ended up banning Mortal Kombat, but they did heavily scrutinize Nighttrap. The hearings in Congress spurred the rest of the world to take a closer look at video games, and while the panic may have played out different, the impact was always the same. Video games would never be seen the same way again. And Sub-Zero tearing a guy's head off was the spark that started it all, though Nighttrap became the scapegoat, the poster child for sex and violence in video games. One scene of a woman getting dragged through a wall would change the landscape of video games across the world. And the funny part is, it got re-released. Nighttrap generated a cult following, and for its 25th anniversary, it was re-released on PC and PS4 with a teen rating. And all of Nintendo's moral outrage during the trials, Nighttrap also got ported onto the Switch. How bad could it have been if Nintendo released it? In the end, Nighttrap wasn't the monster they thought it was, but it was a warning shot. And if you want more deep dives into video games, check out my other videos. See you next time.